So welcome to my Resident Evil tier list. I'm a huge Resident Evil fan with the upcoming Resident Evil 9 Requiem coming out. I wanted to make a nice little list poo. Go ahead and put that down. You gotta see the jacket. So I'm official nerd here. So yeah, let's get on with this tier list. So we're gonna start off with Resident Evil 1 here. Resident Evil 1. What can you say that hasn't already been said? It's a true classic, revolutionized horror, and again, what else can you say? I'm gonna have to give this a spot. It hasn't aged the best, but there's still something to be said. Now, I did add some ports to this that I thought were significant. I think director's cut is pretty significant. I'm gonna put director's cut in B tier. The reason why is because the music is sort of trash. They kind of messed up with the music, but I do like some scenes that they added with the director's cut. Like in the original, Forrest wasn't reanimated into a corpse. It was just crows, which is really weird because the Hot Toys line at the time had a Forrest zombie pounce up. So I kind of found that funny. I guess the toy line came out after the director's cut and they based it off of that. But it actually ended up being canon in the later revised versions of the games. Also, I'm going to be doing this tier list, as you can see, from order of release. I believe I have this in the correct order. I might have one or two things wrong, but whatever. All right, next, we're going to Resident Evil 2, baby. And guess what? S tier. S tier all the way. I love this game. Probably my favorite of the classic Resident Evils with the fixed camera. It added everything that it needed to and just made the formula better. Love the story, love the characters, love the zapping system. Definitely a lot of replayability there. And with the later releases, they did give you a lot of bang for your buck with this, especially like the N64 port. So yeah, top tier, I gotta say, music, fantastic. I'd say I prefer this music over the remakes anytime. The soundtrack is beautiful. All right, next up, Resident Evil 3. Now, Resident Evil 3 is going into A tier, and I'm going to slightly put it ahead of the original Resident Evil for its replayability. This is actually surprising because I don't think it's my favorite in the series, but it's my favorite to replay because it just keeps giving you more and more. With the altered paths and the kind of randomness it throws at you with the item placement, and it's just really fun killing Nemesis and collecting those items. So I have to give it A tier. All right, now we got Resident Evil Gaiden, and no surprise, this is going into D tier. First person Resident Evil. I remember I had the option to choose this or Resident Evil 3. And I chose Resident Evil 3 just because I looked at the back of the thing and I saw it was in first person. I go, that's kind of weird. That's not really Resident Evil. I ended up getting it years later. I played it and it's all right. I think it might have would have been better if you actually used the gun con, but that didn't get released in the States. So it definitely getting some ding for that. All right, next we got Resident Evil Gaiden. I'm going to put this in C tier. It's, pretty baseline game. It's a Game Boy game. They tried to port Resident Evil over. It's not canon. I did have a sealed copy of this. It's probably my biggest regret as far as like a collector goes. I sold it for like $250. Sucked, but I needed money at the time. Now it's worth like $5,000. So if you have a sealed copy of Resident Evil Gaiden, do not get rid of it. I would say that's probably the holy grail for Resident Evil games. All right, next up we got Resident Evil Code Veronica. Code Veronica will have to go into B tier for me. Really wasn't a huge fan of this. I was hyped for it. But I remember getting it on the PS2. I know it was originally Dreamcast. I didn't own a Dreamcast. I had a PS2 at the time, and Code Veronica X with the added story bits or whatever. But this game was dark. Like, you really had to calibrate your TV in order to see anything. And it was hard. It was hard, extremely difficult. I ended up beating it when I was younger, surprisingly. I think one of the trickiest things is they kind of have a zapping system in this. They don't really tell you that, though. You change between Chris and Claire, but the item boxes transfer over. So if you're not prepared for that, or you like, there's one sequence where you go to Claire for like 2 seconds, and if you dump everything off, you have no way to dump it back to Chris, and then just completely screwed it for the last boss. So I'd have to say it's B tier. It's okay. It definitely needs a remake, I think. Out of all of the games, I thought that definitely needed it more than, let's say, like Resident Evil 4. But we'll get to that. All right, next we have Resident Evil Gun Survivor 2. We're putting that in D tier. We're putting it behind. You know what? Dear F, Dear F, Dear F, Dear F, Dear F, Dear F. I'm going to put it in D tier just because the packaging is pretty lit. As a collectible, awesome. Awesome to collect. But it's sort of just a cash grab. Just using Code Veronica's assets to get a weird first-person game that, really didn't do anything. It did add Nemesis, which was weird if you took too long because it was an arcade game. I would love to have an arcade cabinet of it, though. That'd be pretty dope, but still D tier. I'm like, eh. Next up, Resident Evil Remake. All right, this is going to S tier, and this is going to S tier before Resident Evil 2. This is the cream of the crop. When you think of Resident Evil, this is the game. And it even set a standard for remakes. Like, it added more. It made everything beautiful. And I really have to say, this game is a work of art. Even today, it still holds up. Looks gorgeous. All the trickery that went into making everything look photorealistic and eerie, and the sound design, perfect. It was a perfect game. Nothing more can be said. All right, now we got Resident Evil 0. Resident Evil 0. And I have to say, Resident Evil 0, somewhat a disappointment. I did have fun replaying it when it was released in HD, but compared to the remake having like the Crimson Heads, you're expecting that to come back, and some more creative monster designs. A lot of this was just like you're fighting animals, and then like the slugs were kind of cool, but the whole anime character singing opera to them was kind of weird. I much would have liked it better if instead of Billy, no, Billy's a cool character, but he has nothing to do with anything at all. I think they should have had Richard be Billy, and it would have made a lot more sense canonically with the story, especially with Resident Evil Dark Side Chronicles, where you do have levels of Rebecca and Richard like fighting the snake and everything like that. And I think it would have fleshed out that character more and made his death more appealing as a player. So I'm gonna have to put this in. I don't think it's. You know what? I think it's like here. I think it's like here, and I'm gonna do that. It's better than Code Veronica, better than Director's Cut, but it still has its shortcomings, especially with the trade-off system. I don't understand why this game's not co-op. It really should be. I think you had a slight way to control the second player on the Nintendo GameCube if you had a second controller plugged in and used the C-Stick. I'm pretty sure you can control Billy, but I'm not sure why. With it getting remade, they didn't add any sort of co-op. I think that's a huge missed opportunity for that as well. All right, now Resident Evil Deadly Silence. This is a pretty good port of the original, and it adds a lot in terms of like value. With the knife combat, they re-recorded some voice lines to make the mini games a little bit more fleshed out. And they even added like multiplayer. They added a lot to this, even though the multiplayer was a little weird. Like you would see the other players on the screen, but they were just stars. I don't understand why they couldn't just do 3D models. Maybe it slowed down the game too much. But if you do hack the game, you do have you can mod it so that way you can play as any stars member, which is really dope. For the modding portion, I'm gonna say this slightly beats out the original in terms of like what it gives you. as well as like the graphics, better models, all that stuff. If you can find it on a DS, great game. I think you also emulate it pretty easily, so it's pretty good. All right, Resident Evil Dead Aim. I'm gonna have to say this is way better than Survivor. Would I put it in C tier? No, there's like a weird fun about this game that I really don't mind. It's got like a Devil May Cry style to it. I think they kind of use the same engine, even though Devil May Cry was once Resident Evil. There's something about the way they shift the camera and everything. It feels like sort of like a Devil May Cry, like faster or something. Story wasn't bad. It was, it's a spin-off, so it's okay to be different. They had some like weird Sephiroth character in there, which I thought was funny. And yeah, I think it's like a solid B. I think it would be like the last of the Bs, if that makes sense. Okay, Resident Evil Outbreak. Now, to me, Resident Evil Outbreak is really super underrated, like maniacally so. And I would have to say Resident Evil Outbreak is A tier, for the music alone. Great game. If you can get online with friends, it's even better. Now, does the single player have its shortcomings? Yes. But for what it was trying to do at the time, super underrated. They should have had voice chat. Didn't have voice chat. It's one of its, shortcomings. This game is so awesome. Fans resurrected servers just to play it and like patched it and did all this craziness for it. It definitely has a huge following, and it goes to show you how good it was that they were willing to take characters out of that spin-off and put them into mainline Resident Evil. So we're actually going to see some follow-up to Outbreak with Requiem, which I'm pretty stoked about. File 2, it's got my favorite boss of any Resident Evil, Dinks or whatever, the blob with all the guys, and it just, it grabs a tyrant, puts a tyrant on it. I'd have to say it's not as good as 1. They kind of go hand in hand. These are kind of the same game. I believe there was supposed to be a third that didn't come out just because sales were poor. If you don't have a copy of Outbreak File 2 yet and you're a collector, I'd say get one as soon as possible. The prints are very limited, and I think it's only going to go up in value. It's slowly going up with time. So, again, these two, love them. The scenario's a little bit wacky in this one. You had like a zoo with an elephant, but still awesome. They changed some voice actors, I think, too. I think maybe somebody passed away. You could definitely tell they're a little bit different, but again, the community for these games are awesome. Highly recommend trying them out. If you can, look up a guide to get them online and play them online. It's the best way. Okay, Resident Evil 4. It is S tier, and I'd say it beats out Resident Evil 2 in terms of what it did, not only for the franchise. Did it swing it in another direction? Yes, but it was so good in terms of gameplay and everything that it revolutionized the series, and it revolutionized gaming as a whole. A lot of people took inspiration from that as far as their controls and their camera angles and all that. So you really have to appreciate what it did for gaming back when it came out, and it's just fun. Its replayability is out the roof. Storyline was fun. It was like the Evil Dead 2 of the Resident Evils. It wasn't taking itself too seriously, but it still felt grounded. Where it's something like Resident Evil 0 kind of took me out of it with a guy singing to the leeches. But I guess that's just my perspective. RE5. I have to put it in. Would it be B or C? Oh, RE5 is definitely better than Dead Aim, but it's still kind of disappointing as far as like the follow-up to 4. It gave a lot in terms of what it was trying to do. The co-op was amazing. The gore was scaled back a little bit on this one compared to 4. But again, that co-op was awesome. There was multiplayer expansions. I found that fun. It was just nonstop action. I really didn't like that they did with the story. I didn't like what they did with the story so much, as far as they just made up a story where Jill died out of nowhere. The original plot for 5 was way better than what they came out with. I think it was like Chris, Barry, and Jill went to go save, I think it was like Sherry. Sherry was in the test tubes, and then it got changed to Jill. I believe that's why they made her blonde, so that way they didn't have to redo everything. That's why it was easy for them to, I believe, port Barry's like model into that for the Mercenaries mode. The Mercenary mode was insane. Co-op Mercenaries mode is probably one of the best Mercenaries modes in the series. But yeah, it's got to be a B. It definitely brought it down a bit. 4 was here. 5 is definitely there. All right, Umbrella Chronicles. Umbrella Chronicles is cool. It does some weird stuff with the lore. It's kind of average. I think I'm going to put it in C tier. It is okay. Knowing about Wesker and revisiting some stuff from Resident Evil Remake was really cool. Again, the best thing I think was the whole Richard and Rebecca portions. It is an on-rail shooter, so it's more like House of the Dead than a Resident Evil game, and it's okay. Resident Evil Mercenaries DS. I'm going to put this in D tier. It was just, Mercenaries on a DS is pretty impressive at the time with the 3D. It was cool, gimmicky. Something that's kind of weird about this, apparently you can't delete your save data. So as soon as you beat and unlock everything, the game is pretty much done. Days, what up, man? How you been? Long time no see. 5 is better with a friend. 5 is better with a friend. That is for sure. I played it. I played 5 with a friend, and I played 5 with solo. So I've done it all. It's actually one of the only games I platinumed. I was really into that game. All right, Resident Evil Revelations. Okay, I'm gonna put this in. I'm gonna say B tier. Resident Evil Revelations was cool. It's definitely better than Mercenaries DS. It actually gave you storyline. That was cool. It explained what was going on between, I think, 4 and 5 from Chris and Jill's perspective. And there's a lot of backstabbing and weird things and conspiracies. It's like a Metal Gear Resident Evil as far as its storyline. They talked about another outbreak city that got blown up. It kind of doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. However, the final boss was really dope. He had like a fish, what do you call it? Like a sea creature tyrant that could, what's it called? I want to say the word is like hypnotize you and show like different states he was in. You had to find the right one. It was really challenging, but Revelations was cool. I didn't like the scanning mechanic. That sucked in it. I didn't like the one goofy duo. That kind of seemed out of place. Wasn't a fan of them, but overall, I can't complain. That's been a minute, man. I'm surprised you're up this late. All right, well, to the next thing, we have Resident Evil Dark Side Chronicles. And, yeah, this one is... It's definitely less than Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles because the camera is super, super shaky. And I was really excited to play this when it came out because it was going through Resident Evil 2. I was really hyped to see Resident Evil 2 again and with updated graphics. I think it also went through, like, Code Veronica and... a new segment with Leon and Krauser before Krauser. So, like, storyline-wise, it's cool because it kind of bridges a gap. Gameplay-wise, shaky camera. I'm going to put it in last of C tier. And that's going to be that. All right, now we're... First F tier, Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. My God. Now... sort of a fun game, but for a Resident Evil game, no, bad, terrible. Resident Evil 9 does look very good. Resident Evil 9 actually looks amazing. I can't wait for it. I'm hoping they kept some surprises for fans. But back to Operation Raccoon City. Terrible game. As far as a Resident Evil game, you have the option to kill Leon, which is insane. I can't believe they would even try that. As ballsy. Buggy mess. However, if this didn't have the Resident Evil license on it, and it was like Hunter the Reckoning or something along those lines, it would be a pretty decent, like, fun game in terms of its gameplay compared to something like Umbrella Corps. And Umbrella Corps is just, that is the bottom of the barrel trash in the Resident Evil series, a detriment to its name. But either way, storyline, pretty bad. One saving grace, well, there's some saving graces. They brought back Crimson Heads where everybody else was afraid to, for whatever reason. Another thing with Resident Evil 9, apparently they're bringing back Crimson Heads or something like them when you down a zombie, so that is pretty dope. With Operation Raccoon City, they brought back Crimson Heads. They were just faster zombies. They weren't as good as the remake's Crimson Heads. And then there's like a character on there that can control zombies with like umbrella stuff. That was my go-to character. And they had like an opposite, like the Marines came in and they were fighting the Marines. That was the opposite opposing faction or whatever. And they had a DLC for that. And the Marines somehow knew how to control zombies too, which is, it just doesn't make sense. But they had a really cool, I think it was like a liquor tyrant. No. That wasn't it. They brought back the spider zombies from Resident Evil 1.5. And if you don't know what Resident Evil 1.5 was, it's Resident Evil 2 before it was Resident Evil 2. The original Resident Evil 2 got scrapped. One of the scrapped enemies was like a spider human hybrid. It was really dope looking, and they actually brought that back for this and made a spider human tyrant. It was pretty dope. And that's probably the biggest praise I can give this game. All right, now Resident Evil Revelations 2. C tier. I really like the fact that they brought back Barry. I'll put it here. I see. They brought back Barry. That was dope. What was I gonna say? The portion with Claire and Barry's daughter were okay. I really liked the tyrant, which was Claire's love interest. I feel like she's always getting the guys that transform into monsters somehow, which is kind of funny. The co-op was a little weird because like one person was the firepower, the other person like shined lights on people, or played a little girl spotting people. And I believe in the single player you had to switch. It's kind of foggy. All I know is it falls into that trap of like not giving you like enough ammo, but wants you to shoot everything in order to survive. Like there's no way to get around things. And I think this is what sort of kills Resident Evil 6. Like it didn't drop enough ammo, but it was very like, we want you to shoot everything, heavy game. They gave those chess pieces that were useless. But yeah, let's just dive right on in Resident Evil 6. Oh, Resident Evil 6. Oh, you almost killed the franchise. Bang for your buck in terms of what you get, like how much game you get, right? I want to say it's almost D tier, but I have to say it's low C tier. The amount of game you get is insane. It's the longest Resident Evil, but quantity doesn't always beat quality. Quantity doesn't always beat quality. Blech. And that's essentially what's going on with this game. Too many different play styles. You tried to have like the classic horror-ish with Leon, and then the real run and gun with Chris, and then you have Nemesis with Sherry's campaign. And it was just like a jumbled up mess. It had its cool sections, but God, the QTE events sucked in this game. the controls were hit or miss. The crazy thing is, I think the guy who led Outbreak, and it's just insane the level of difference. What do you say, RE6? RE6 brought to you by Michael Bay. Oh, yes. You got, like, the heart or whatever blocked, whatever you were saying. My bad. So, yeah, a lot of explosions, a lot of crazy transformations. I did like some of the enemy design. It was weird that a guy turned into, like, a T-Rex, and then he turned into a dinosaur. No, he turned into a dinosaur and then a mosquito. Excuse me, a T-Rex, then a mosquito, then, like, this dog thing. It cranked everything up to, like, 12 for, like, no reason. And yeah, that's Resident Evil 6. I think it almost, like, killed the franchise as far as, like, what the fans wanted. But it sold really well. Had a lot of publicity. I think Conan O'Brien played this on one of his segments. All right, Resident Evil Umbrella Corps. Terrible game. I don't understand how hard it is to make, like, a umbrella shooter. It sounds like a really cool concept, but they keep messing this up. Like I said, it's just there wasn't anybody playing it when it was released. The servers were a mess. It was glitchy. They tried to go like that. I don't want to say looter shooter, but something along those lines of, like, where it was like a competitive shooter, and it just did not land. It brought back levels from RE4. That was kind of cool to see. Too bad it was trash. And yeah, just poopy. All right, next up, Resident Evil 7. I'm going to give this S tier. This, and I like that order. This revitalized the series in terms of, like, its horror elements. The VR for it was, I believe, revolutionary as far as, like, what it was doing at the time. Of course, you didn't have the wands and everything, but you had the controller with the VR mask, and it was really cool. Yeah, the story, you were just a dude trying to look for his wife, got a little crazy, a lot of heavy inspirations from, like, The Hills Have Eyes and Rob Zombie films, and it was done really well. The first half of the game is a lot stronger than the second half, but still I can't take that away from the game as a whole. I don't understand why they changed the model of Chris Redfield again. Made him look real skinny. The DLC for this game was a little bit wild. I remember you playing Chris Redfield. You go after the last Baker guy. That was fine. And then you played as... I think there was, like, a DLC where you play as Zoe. And then there was another one where you play as Jack Baker's brother. But you thought Jack was dead. They did some weird stuff with, like, mental things. Like, they're all connected because they're all being controlled by the main bad guy. But it turns out, like, he wasn't dead and he wasn't sorry. He was still going after his daughter, but as, like, a nasty swamp thing. Anyway, that DLC was very weird. But still, it doesn't take away from what it did for the series. S tier. Okay. Resident Evil 2 Remake. Resident Evil 2 Remake. For me, right, I think, like, most people would say it's S tier. Most people would say it's S tier. I'm going to say it's A tier. And it's only A tier because of what it kind of left out, as opposed to, like, the original, where, like, the remake of 1 gave you more, right? Where this took that formula, made it spooky, made zombies very hard and scary again. I will give it that. But the zapping system was kind of left out. The A and B scenarios weren't really fleshed out that good. That part kind of seemed rushed. It gave you a lot of DLC for free, but it wasn't anything of substance, in my opinion. It's a hard game. I don't think it's easy. And, like, if I had to look back and I want to play, do I want to play RE2 or I want to play RE2 Remake? I'm always going to want to play RE2. That said, what they did with Mr. X was insane. How he was just kept constantly chasing you. Done very, very well. Give you that tension. The first half of the game is set up way better than the last half. And it stayed truer to the original design of the game, whereas like the latter half kind of just was like all new. And it really wasn't too many familiar locations as opposed to like the original. So that's why I have to say it's A. It could be S. Oh yeah, the other thing I didn't like how they changed the look of the Ivies. I thought that was like a downgrade. They were just like plant zombies. I also didn't like that they didn't give us the liquor mutations. So that's where I am with that. Resident Evil 3 remake. Oh my god, what a fall. C tier. C tier all the way. What a shortcoming this was when you compare it to RE2 remake. This was like hype, a lot of hype for this, because Resident Evil 3, one of the best ones to like replay. We thought we were kind of getting something similar to this, and we got a game. The game is like, it's good. I'm gonna put this like a high 3, a high C. I think I like 3 better than all these, but it detracted so much from the main game. I didn't like the design of Nemesis. He was like a pushover. He just threw a grenade and he dropped everything. And now if you're playing on Inferno, it's a whole different story, but like, you die in one hit. There's definitely a challenge to it. It's definitely like a streaming game. I think if you just had this as like a spin-off and it didn't have the Resident Evil 3 legacy behind it, and this is a new Resident Evil, here you go, and you change the look of the character, I think it would have done really well. I think it's a fun game, but man, did it take so much from the original and just gutted it. Less Nemesis forms, got rid of locations, and Resident Evil 3, the original, was made in like I think less time, and they managed to squeeze a lot out of their developers for the time. So to see this was just disappointing, in my opinion. All right. Resident Evil Resistance. I think it's like a good idea on paper, but like, kind of weird that all the characters are teenagers. I would have liked to see a little bit more like diversity with like age groups, if that makes sense. Kind of like Resident Evil Outbreak. You had a whole slew of characters, and it kind of made more sense, where these were just like, oh yeah, we picked up random high school kids off the side of the road, and we're trying to really catch that Dead by Daylight crowd with this. I really think it's cool that, like I said, the concept's cool. The fact that, one player is trying to kill all these kids and blah, 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 blah. I just think it was done poorly. I'm going to put it in D tier because I like the idea of it. The idea of it's cool. But the execution is just poor. Okay, Resident Evil Village. All right, I'm going to have to put this in like a B tier. I didn't think it was like revolutionary. It wasn't as good as 7. It got a little weird with the werewolf and vampires and like big titty goth ladies chasing you and shit. They changed Chris's design again. I like the story of it, as far as like Ethan trying to get his daughter and then realizing his daughter's hacked up into pieces, and then the revelation that Ethan died in 7 was awesome. Spoilers, I guess, too late for that. So I really like that aspect of it. I kind of like how they brought the Resident Evil 4 gameplay a bit back to it. I'm not a huge fan of first-person perspectives. It worked really well. Like, 7 surprised me because I didn't think I was going to like it, but it ended up being really good. With this, that DLC where you got in third person, I just felt it was like, I like that. I like that personally more. But you know, as it sit. Also, the DLC was really weird with the Rose stuff and the Mega Myseed, and I don't know, it just kind of got a little weird for me, personally. But yeah, it's not a bad game. I would put it, yeah, I'd put that there. I'd much rather play 5. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, I think that's what I want. Okay. Resident Evil Reverse F. This game was like dead on arrival. Kind of a cool concept, right? If I'm looking at it as a standalone thing, terrible as just like an offshoot for a, you know, if they just had this as like 3 or I think it came out with 8. If they just had this come out with 8 and just call it like Resident Evil Village multiplayer, I think it would have been okay. But as it's on its own, just, you know, whatever. All right. 4 remake. S tier. S tier. Oh my God. They killed it with this remake. I was a non-believer. I was like, we don't need a remake of 4. Now, did they do everything perfectly? No, there's some things I didn't like that they took out. But ultimately, man, it is a fun ride. I like what they did with Luis. I didn't like how he died in it. I thought it was dumb that Jack Krauser killed him. I thought it was a lot cooler when in the original RE4 that he got killed with that tentacle through his fucking chest. But man, that section where you're going through the mines and he's helping you out and shit, I really felt like, man, this would be a really good co-op experience. And it's just like, damn. Like, I don't want this co-op. Well, if they remake it, yeah, you want that. But, like, I really didn't care for Sheva. I didn't care for her as a character. Whereas like Luis, like, oh, you know, damn, there's good shit. What else is there to be said? The graphics were amazing. And it just took it up a notch. And I think this is kind of gonna lead us to a better Resident Evil 9, right? I think that this hybrid system that they're going for with you know, a little bit of Resident Evil 4, a little bit of Resident Evil 7 is going to be a crazy combination. And who's to say that that's all they're going to do? There might be a lot more that we don't know yet. Again, it's not out yet. But yeah, I think this is a good list, right? I'd say like this is pretty much it, right? Like, you know, you got your D's, your C's, your B's, A's, and your all-time greats: Resident Evil, Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 4 Remake, and Resident Evil 7. Now, I think most people would probably take this and put that up there, but I have my own personal reasons why that's not there, and it just edged it out slightly. I'm gonna put that there. And yeah, I like the order of that. As far as these go, I'm gonna put Resident Evil 2 bottom there. Resident Evil 4 has to be above Remake, only because that game still holds up. You could still play 4, and you know, you would have a blast. It still holds up today. Resident Evil is the pinnacle of Resident Evil. Can't beat that. Just gonna go through these again. Nemesis, great game, love to replay it. You really can't go wrong if you're a classic Resident Evil. I think this is the funnest one to play. Replay if you're like a streamer or something and you want the classic fixed cameras. You can't go wrong. Outbreak, severely underrated. I need ports. Please port these. I'm almost like, I also want like a Resident Evil File 3 to kind of round that out, because I know there's content that is not out. You can actually hack some of it back into the games. But I want to play through those scenarios. There's supposed to be like a motel or something that looked pretty cool. Resident Evil DS slightly beats out the original Resident Evil, but not by much. I have to give up props to where it all started. That's why it's an A. B, yeah, Village. Village is a good game. Just a little weird. Zero. Would I say 0 is better than 5? I think I'd much rather replay 0 than 5. So I agree with that. I definitely would rather replay 0 than any of the other ones, so I like that there. 5 is way better than Code Veronica in terms of like replaying it. I'd much rather play 5 than Code Veronica. The co-op is a standout for the series. I think this is the best like current multiplayer that you can play is 5. Code Veronica sorely needs a remake, that is for sure. Again, pretty revolutionary for its time. They got rid of the what do you call them? Pre-rendered backgrounds with the full 3D with the power of the Dreamcast. Although I'd have to say I much rather look at pre-rendered backgrounds. It worked out really well for 0 and remake, but it was still cool to see, cinematic, not cinematic, where the camera pans and all that other stuff. Director's cut is director's cut. Crappy music. Cool stuff to see. Definitely not the worst. I played director's cut. Dead Aim. It's Dead Aim. Yep. Revelations. Solid B. You know what? I think I'd put Revelations before director's cut and Dead Aim. I think I like that better. Only because I feel like the story is better than this. And some of the gameplay is a lot cooler than that. So, yeah, I'd have to say Revelations is better than Dead Aim. And because we already have these Resident Evils here, I'd much rather play it than that. All right, then we have... Ooh, all right, yeah, I think... For C tier, how are we looking? Yeah, I think that's good. You know what? I'm pretty sure I'm gonna move Revelations 2 to the back because Revelations 2's downfall is also 6's, which is like gonna put you into situations where you need ammo but not give you any way to get ammo. It's just really annoying to play through, and it's like I said, if we're gonna play a shoot 'em up kind of games, which I would say these are, they should give you more ammo or ways to kind of get more ammo. There's a little bit more with 6. I believe that it's like heavy on like the melee focus, but playing a shooting game, come on, I don't want to melee unless it's like Outbreak. Outbreak was like, oh yeah, I got pipe. Yeah, like I said, you get trapped, but that wasn't the main focus. You can still kind of run around stuff. Yeah, Umbrella Chronicles is way more better than Dark Chronicles. Yep, I'd much rather play Survivor than any of these, and we're gonna move that there because that's bottom of the barrel there. Bottom of the barrel. I think I'd rather play Operation Raccoon City than Reverse. Yeah, but yeah, that's it. That's my Resident Evil tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed. More content coming to you guys soon. Thanks, Days, for tuning in. It was good seeing you. Peace out.